Welcome to Run, Thrive, Survive with me, your host, Sierra Carter, the #1 podcast for your healthy habits for nutrition and exercise, race reviews from special guests, and everyday motivation. And of course, you guys, surviving life together. Are you guys ready? Let's go. Hey guys, and welcome to another awesome day here on Run, Thrive, Survive. I'm your host, Sierra Carter. As usual, we are here to run our lives and not let life run. I've got a super fun and exciting episode for you guys today. As always, we are here with Dr. Ryan. He is a chiropractor, and as you guys know, a lot of us, we're very active, especially if you're listening to this podcast. You're most likely listening when we do a lot of race reviews, and as runners or triathletes or whatever we are, we pound ourselves into the ground, and we make and push our bodies to the limits. So he is here today to talk to us a little bit of why we need not to slow down, but to take care of ourselves while we do all of these things. So I want to introduce Dr. Ryan. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sierra. I'm great. How are you?
Good. So just go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us a little overview, who you are and what you do.
So my name is Ryan Delzell. I'm a Florida native, born and raised. And I got into chiropractic sort of by some family influence. I had a family friend that had a practice and sort of needed some help, and I was looking for a career change, and so she suggested chiropractic, and I fell in love with it immediately. I saw the benefits that people get from it and the things that we're preventing and helping heal, and so it's been great. I just fell in love with it.
Now, chiropractic care is something that we all hear about all the time. You know, if something happens, a lot of people say, hey, have you tried a chiropractor? You should go to a chiropractor. You should see a chiropractor. People are even referred to chiropractors. What is chiropractic in general? Like, how would you explain it to somebody that doesn't know what it is, but just hears this term thrown at them all the time?
Right. So the actual term itself, when you break it down, it means to be done by hand. And so what we're doing is we're performing chiropractic adjustments or manipulations with our hands. Excuse me. And so what is that? What is an adjustment? The bones in the spine and in our frame can misalign, and so when those bones become misaligned, they can put pressure on nerves, it can put pressure on surrounding soft tissues, maybe blood vessels, and long story short, in a general sense, it creates dysfunction, and so the body's not able to operate optimally. And so our job is to go in and find those areas of dysfunction and remove them and let the body heal and operate naturally and optimally.
Absolutely. And now a lot of us hear a lot of different things about chiropractor. Now, before we get into the benefits and I ask you more about the benefits, what are some of the myths and stories you've heard, you know, maybe yourself or maybe you've heard from other people about chiropractic? What are your favorite ones that you just kind of like to debunk all of the time?
The most popular one for sure is that once you start seeing a chiropractor, you always have to see one, and it's sort of delivered with a thought of we've created this issue that constantly has to be checked on or something along those lines. And I would argue that the person is right as far as you should see a chiropractor continually, except I'm going to argue that it's more from a maintenance standpoint. A lot of times I do get calls that someone just wants wellness care. They've had a chiropractor in the past and they're ready for a new one to establish, and they're basically wellness. But of course, I get those that are hurt or they have chronic issues. And so once we get them to a point where they're doing okay, they're released to a maintenance care, which is typically around once a month. And so, yes, once you see one, you should see one to kind of maintenance yourself. We maintenance our vehicles and our cars. This is our vehicle while we're on Earth. We should have it maintained as well.
Now, I want to bring up how I met you. So how I met you, for everybody listening, I met Dr. Ryan I think it was 2019. It was actually August of 2019 because I had just gotten in a car accident. Somebody had just rear-ended me. And my doctor, of all people, was like, sorry, I don't look at patients that were just in car accidents. And to me, I was like, well, that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But at the same time, I was like, all right, well, I'm not a huge fan of the medical doctors anyways, so I'll just go somewhere else. I literally went to a talk that night after getting that phone call from them to cancel my appointment with the doctor, and Dr. Ryan was speaking about chiropractic care. And he was talking about all these benefits. And I was thinking, well, I was just in a car accident, literally drove up, I think, with my little red Camaro that the rental company gave me, and I was thinking I should probably go see a chiropractor. So I was talking to Dr. Ryan. He gave all of these benefits down. And before I get into the rest of the story, what are some benefits of chiropractic care? What are like the main ones that you've seen personally happen with people?
So when it comes to wellness, or people that are, don't have super big acute issues or anything like that, they're going to get improved sleep, improved body function, better energy. As far as being athletes, they get better performance with their running or their jumping, whatever. They're able to basically perform at an optimum level. Right. And then for those that actually have pain, or they have dysfunction, or there is some sort of ailment or issue, they get resolution of their symptoms. They feel better. They are healing and thriving, and their quality of life is better, and they're able to do daily activities that were maybe limited in doing. And so a lot of those are going to be being able to be a family member to their children again, be able to go outside and play, or do tasks around the house, you know what I mean? Things that are important to family members or what have you. Absolutely.
And I think when I was listening to your talk, you had said something about sinus infection, or was it something about sinus problems, where it relieves all these different things. And that was another thing that tipped me off, because at this time in my life, I was getting sinus infections probably every 2 months, which sounds, I know everyone tells me to go get that surgery thing, but I know people have done it. It's sometimes it doesn't even work on you. So to me, I'm like, why would I do that? So when I went to Dr. Ryan, I had a few sessions with him. I had also had this other issue in my back where I was like, yeah, my legs go tingle and numb. And it's been like that for probably like 10 years outside of this car accident. Literally the next day, all of that stopped. I mean, for me, I know you say it doesn't happen immediately and sometimes takes time.
Sure.
I saw a huge difference the next day in my running. And then I started getting compliments in my running form. Everyone's like, oh, you're not smacking your left foot anymore. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, that has a lot to do with all my alignment issues that I never took care of for 10 years. And that was me being I think I was 21 when I went to him. So these problems were when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, all through high school, all through college, any time. So Ryan, when you see patients, do a lot of them come to you with not issues, but problems, or are people starting to see past that and understand that chiropractic care is actually really important for just their health, maybe for their kids, before something happens?
So being more proactive with their health.
Yes.
I do get a couple of people from time to time that will call, like I mentioned before, about just for wellness, or they're being proactive about their health. It is happening, but for the most part, people do call when there's a problem.
Of course.
And so again, back to the car analogy, our body is like a car, and so our check engine light will come on, and most people will tend to ignore it, put it off to the side. We'll maintenance it later, and then eventually there ends up being a blowout or something breaks, and so that's when I get a phone call. And so one of the things that I really love to do is educate, and patients are going to get a real heavy dose of education on the first couple of visits, and a lot of that is to educate on maintenance, the importance of keeping things checked up every once in a while. And so yes, I can get you back likely to a place where you're feeling well and everything is good, how you were before your accident. But then it's going to be a matter of keeping up with it. I don't like when patients say, oh, thank you, I appreciate it, I'll call you when I need you again. It's like, well, I'm glad that you believe in chiropractic enough to call me back when you need it, but you should be kind of getting it all along.
Absolutely. Now, with a lot of your patients, what kind of concerns do they come to you about chiropractic? So not the myths that they hear, but a lot of us have these deep-rooted ideas of chiropractic. What are those that you have to talk through with them and kind of like understand that you're not going to hurt them? A lot of people think chiropractors are out to hurt you.
Well, maybe not, they're not out to hurt
well,
them.
Maybe not out to hurt, but
right. There's basically this almost understanding of, well, I'm going to hurt, and that's not always the case. And so yes, there is some instances where you might be sore later the same day or even the next day, and that's very normal. That's an indication that things are moving around and changing, and the body is healing. And so a lot of times I will hear a patient say, I got adjusted X amount of years ago and I was sore and they hurt me. And it's like, well, did they tell you that would be normal? And did it eventually get better, like even just in a day or so? And I usually hear, yeah. And I'm like, well, then that was that guy's fault, or that doctor's fault for not educating you that this is going to be part of the normal healing process. So yeah, I do explain that that's pretty normal. I do use a lot of analogies. It helps people to understand. One of the analogies I love to use as far as what's happening in the body with chiropractic and these misalignments called subluxations, it's kind of like the garden hose analogy I like to use. I think we've talked about this one a lot. And so basically you imagine a garden hose coming off of your house and feeding a sprinkler that's maybe 20 or 30 yards down the way. If it's not, and there's a kink in the hose, maybe there's something's impeding the water flow, and so the sprinkler's not going to be able to perform its job properly. The grass or whatever in the area is going to start wilting and dying. You think there's an issue over there. You check the sprinkler, replace it perhaps, and that's not the issue. Follow back up to the house or back up to the sprinkler, the water spigot, and you realize the hose is kinked or there's some sort of obstruction. And so once you get that released, the interference is gone, things are flowing like it should, things operate like they should, the healing comes later. Is that grass immediately green? No, it's going to take a little while. So the body does have a healing process. You're not instantly better. When patients do report that they have this, oh my gosh, I'm great tonight, or I'm better the next day, that's bonus. That's party. Awesome. It's never really meant to be immediate. What's meant to be immediate is the healing.
Absolutely. Now, coming up after this break, I want to ask you about a few things that you do differently, because you are much different than the chiropractor that I would think of in my mind. And I think that is what definitely sold me on this. So coming up after break, after our first sponsor, we will be talking to Dr. Ryan about what he does differently and why you should probably look for this in a chiropractor. Coming up after this. Take your training to the next level with Zensaw Compression. As the original creator of the compression leg sleeves, Zensaw helps provide runners and all athletes with muscle support, pain relief, injury prevention, and faster recovery. All products are made with premium Zensaw fabric, which is lightweight, moisture wicking, and anti-odor, meaning they will stay dry and smell great even during the toughest conditions. Try our best-selling compression sleeves, socks, seamless sports bras, and more to see how Zensaw can help you perform without limits. Visit Zensaw.com to see all of our athletic wear, running gear, and compression products, and use code all caps Sierra CIARA 20 for 20% off your next order. Again, that's ZENSAH.com. Zensaw, perform without limits. Welcome back, you guys. So we are here still with Dr. Ryan, and like I said before the break, he does something differently than what you'd think most chiropractors do. So I envision, when you talk about chiropractor, I just think of YouTube and those, I forgot, they call them like ABC something, pleasure something, where you can hear the pops. You know, watch them crack their neck, crack their back, crack their hips, whatever it is, and you just hear the popping all day long. That's what I envision a chiropractor, right? But Dr. Ryan, he's gonna kind of burst that bubble for you, for me, and he's looking at me like, I don't know about burst.
Pop that bubble.
Pop that bubble. You just heard that pop, the joint pops. He does something a little bit differently. So I'm gonna hand over the mic and just let him explain how he separates himself from a general chiropractor.
Well, the first thing I want to mention is that I'm mobile. That's definitely the biggest thing. I could mention the fact that I use an instrument, and the fact that I go focus on upper cervical, which we'll talk about that stuff. But the main thing is that I'm mobile. I come to you, and so that's very convenient and super awesome for people. But yeah, I do use an instrument. It's called an activator. It's very gentle. It's very fast. It's very accurate. Compared to my hand, it's going to be, to me, better. And so I don't have that ego that won't allow me to use something that's a little bit, in my mind, better and more effective. So I would say 90% of the adjustments that I perform are with that instrument. Most patients have no issue with it whatsoever. It makes a little click sound that's kind of loud. That's actually the biggest complaint, is the sound. Most people are a little reluctant to suggest that it even did anything, and so because of that reluctancy, there's actually been a lot of research done on the technique, and it's definitely effective, and it is absolutely performing what we need it to do.
Right. Now, for listeners thinking you use this instrument, what does this instrument look like? What when you come to their house, what do you pull out of your bag to start?
So the things I bring with me are an adjusting table that opens up, and I got my doctor bag with me, and one of the things besides a massage gun is also this instrument. And so it looks, I used to say in the past, it looked like something else, but it was very threatening. And so now what I say is it looks like a mini pogo stick. You literally hold it in your hand and squeeze it, and it has a little excursion pulse one-time shot. And Absolutely. It's very, very gentle, and it's not aggressive at all.
So, and how is this different from just using your hand? It doesn't over-adjust you?
So right, with a hand adjustment, we're taught to use what's called our piezoform part of our hand, and that's sort of this area here for those of us watching. And basically, that's a large area that if I put that on a patient's spine, and I just want to adjust, say T6, and I load up and do a typical manual adjustment, I'm probably moving more than just T6.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if I determine that just T6 is the one that needs to move, that's the one with dysfunction, the instrument is going to allow me to just adjust T6. And so I feel like it's much more specific, and we're not over adjusting the patient, not only quantity of segments,
right,
but also in the delivery of the adjustment itself. It's much more gentle and not aggressive in that manner.
Now, you mentioned something about you focus upper cervical. When you say that to patients, what would that mean?
Upper cervical is referring to the literally the top 2 bones in the neck. You have 7 total, and the first one beneath the skull is called Atlas. And so much like the Greek god, we all remember he was holding up the world. Well, your Atlas bone is literally holding up your world. And so that's why they call it that. It's shaped very much like a ring, and it pivots around the bone beneath it, which is called axis. That's why it's called that. And a lot of the motion that we have, the rotation in our head from side to side, comes from that upper cervical complex. It's got a wide range of motion. You know what I mean? It's kind of, if you think back to survival, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, what have you, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. It was all about survival. And so that comes at a cost, or with a cost, I should say. That Atlas bone is only held in place by soft tissues and ligaments, and so it can very easily come out of place, or I should say be misaligned. And because of all the intricate structures in that area between arteries and cranial nerves and all sorts of stuff, it could be a detriment to someone's health. For one person, it might affect their stomach, and they might have issues with digestion. Another person has migraines, and then this person has neck pain. So it's just, how does it affect each patient?
So I want to give just kind of a visual. Like when you adjust me, you focus on both my Atlas, and then you go down to check if my feet, if one foot is longer than the other. How is that affected throughout the body? How does that process work? Or just a general overview?
No, yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things that we do as upper cervical doctors is we do an exam particular to that upper cervical area. And so we'll have the patient lay face up or supine, and we do a leg length check on them. And basically, if there's something off all the way up at the Atlas bone, which we kind of look at as the foundation of the spine, it's instead of being on the bottom, it's on the top. And so if your head, is not sitting on your shoulders straight, and it's kind of cocked at an angle, then the shoulder is going to bring the head up so that it's straight. But now your body's pitched off to one side, and then your hip's going to come up. So you have these compensations going down the spine, and because the hips sort of work in a torquing manner, it's going to yank a leg up. And so when I go to check the feet, the leg length, it's going to appear to be short. And that's just telling me that there's dysfunction, neuromuscular dysfunction within the body, and that's giving me an indication on where to start looking and where to start treating.
I'm pretty sure, for everybody listening, that's pretty much what happened to me. I know my head was always off to one side. And I know this because I used to go through walking classes, and for a little bit, like when I was younger, modeling. And they would literally tell me to tilt my head back. And I was like, oh, I thought it was up straight. And I knew I had the problem then. And of course, when Dr. Ryan goes on the first appointment with me, he's like, oh yeah, this leg's longer than that leg. And I'm like, well, I've been told that too, but they wanted to do surgery on my lower back to get that aligned back when I was a freshman in high school. So I think that just kind of brings out the importance before any type of major event, especially if you're that young. I don't know. I would get second opinions, and
try
one of those
conservative.
Yes, get a second opinion. Maybe a chiropractor fits that second opinion. Now, when you're working with patients, or if you're giving advice to anybody, how does somebody find a chiropractor that's good for them?
Okay, yeah, that could be certainly a daunting task, especially if you're in pain. and you don't have a
Right.
referral, you don't have a friend with a story that can give you a name, first thing you're going to want to think about is a technique. Some people like the twisting, cracking, manual adjustment. They want that. They know that something happened. They heard a sound. Something happened.
Really quick,
Sure.
the technique names. What is your technique name versus a regular technique that most people think of with the popping, the snapping?
I'm
Everything.
not sure that a regular layman is going to understand or know technically the techniques. Like, for instance, we're trained in school. I went to Palmer University. We learned what was called the Palmer package. And so we got a little bit of Thompson technique, and that's going to have, there's a table with drops built in the lumbar and the thoracic and sometimes cervical sections, and basically you're using the patient's body weight and gravity to administer most of the adjustment.
Gotcha.
So there's a drop table there, that's called Thompson. Diversified is sort of the more popular manual techniques that everybody's going to be familiar with. That's called diversified, but we would just refer to it as manual. That's
Gotcha.
how most people hear it.
Manual. All right.
And then the technique, like I said, I utilize the activator tool. I utilize that instrument, but I don't follow the protocol to a T, so I don't really like to say that I do activators specifically. And I do have the upper cervical focus, so I kind of have a little bit of everything.
So there's a bunch of different terms that people should just really ask questions about.
Yeah, basically find out the techniques. Do you want to use do you want the doctor to use an instrument? Do you want them to use their hand? That's a good starting point.
Absolutely. And now, what are the other kind of points and things that people should think about when looking for a chiropractor?
Next thing might be reputation. I would go on Google or social media avenues and do a search and see what some of the reviews, what people are saying about the experiences that they've had with their adjustments. Yeah, just basically trying to get a referral through a review, since you don't have maybe perhaps a personal friend with a testimonial.
Absolutely. Now, location. I know that.
Or availability, yeah. So sometimes, you might find a good doc, but maybe they're all the way across town, or lo and behold, there's one right in your area, your neighborhood. So, and then what's their availability? Do they have, late hours? Are they open on the weekends? I get a lot of calls. I've had a lot of patients start or initiate with me just simply because I was open on Saturday and taking appointments on a Saturday, or I could come see them after dinner. It was maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. But then they ended up liking what they got so much that they stuck with me. So that was kind of cool. I basically got in their door, so to say, just because I was available in off hours.
Yeah. That's huge. People don't have to take off of work to come see you.
Right.
It's the biggest reason people don't even take care of themselves is because their boss might not give them time off of work. They might not get time. They have kids. It gets busy. So that's definitely a big, huge plus. So kind of wrapping it up before we get to our last segment of the podcast, what is one, I guess, big takeaway that you want people to understand about chiropractic?
That it helps. It's absolutely doing something. I love it when people go, "Oh, you're a chiropractor? I believe in chiropractic." And well, good, because it's not a unicorn. There's science behind it. It is a thing. And so, yes, it's very hard to suggest we're preventing a lot of things, because how do you live a life with it and a life without it and then compare?
Right.
But I'm very, very, very much a believer that we're preventing a lot of things as well, which is why I'm a super big advocate in getting kids adjusted. A lot of times things can be averted or missed in their adult years if they had been checked early on. And so not only do I usually push patients to get their kids checked, I also usually offer a pretty big discount too, just to kind of get them to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had met you 10 years ago. I might have been able to play basketball throughout the high school, but I couldn't because my feet and legs would tingle and go numb. Now, it's time for the mile rundown, and the mile rundown is kind of new in the podcast because I really love to get to know the guest and just any advice that they have to pretty much run our own lives. So, Brian, I got 4 questions for you. The first one is, what favorite, maybe it's an inspirational book, podcast, or maybe a TED Talk, videos, have you seen that you think would benefit anybody listening to this podcast that wants to make themselves a healthier, happier human being?
So I don't really have a specific podcast or a book perhaps that someone should go reference, but I definitely try to tell my patients, basically you need to have a good stress relief. I've seen way too much in recent months, people's body manifestations of poor health from something that they have stuck in their head, from either a past trauma or even a current sort of stressful situation that's going on. So please make sure you're processing your stressful events properly. That's definitely key. But also too, back to the body, just making sure that you're trying to eat as healthy as possible, exercising most days of the week. When it comes to supplements, I basically a multivitamin, a probiotic, and an omega-3 oil are sort of basic. Those definitely, and drink plenty of water. I think that's the one thing that anybody that's a patient of mine, what does Dr. Ryan always tell you? Drink water. Nobody drinks enough water.
Get a nice big jug, just like this one.
Keep it with you all the time. The easy formula is take your body weight and cut it in half, and that's how many ounces you should drink. So if you're a 200-pound person, you should be drinking about 100 ounces of water.
Absolutely.
Simple as that, especially if you're in warmer climates in the summer months. Make sure you're hydrating properly.
Absolutely.
And yeah, just doing those couple of things will really help sort of snowball. Everything just sort of takes shape and starts snowballing and moving in a positive direction, getting that pendulum swinging back in the right direction. And you'll definitely notice a difference literally within weeks.
Everything always feels much better when you take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
Now, question number 2. I think I might know the answer to this one for you. Most inspiring place you've traveled to?
Well, it was something that came to me in a vision during a meditation. I saw basically a nice green, lush forest, and it seemed kind of Pacific Northwest-ish. I had never been to that area of the country. I'd traveled all around the United States, but I hadn't quite been up there yet, and so I made it a mission to get up there and check it out. Fell in love with it. Made it a mission to basically relocate. I tried last year. I went out there early February, and basically COVID sort of stifled any sort of attempt to get my business going, and so I was forced to come back to Florida and sort of wait things out, but I'm ready to go back, and so we're going back to the greater Portland area here very soon and accepting patients and going to give this another go.
Portland, Oregon. God, it looks so pretty out there. Now, question number 3. What do you do to relax or unwind, with your mind especially?
And so what's my stress relief, huh?
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, I found my best buddy in the world, Romeo. I adopted him, and just by getting him out and about and going outside and taking him for walks, I found a new appreciation for the outdoors and for nature and connecting with that. And so I love to do that. I get him out multiple times a day, and just found a passion for that. And that's another kind of inspiring reason to head out to the Pacific Northwest too, is to be able to enjoy a whole new terrain in a weather and climate that's a little bit more appealing to me.
Hopefully there's less bugs out that way too. Now this last question to wrap up the podcast. The mission is pretty much to run your life before life runs you. That's the mission that we're all on. How do you run your life?
Again, I would just say just making sure you're staying on top of your health, and there's mind, body, and soul. I mean, it's all 3 pillars. You can focus on eating properly and making sure you're not putting anything in your body that's toxic. But if that only is in an ingested sense, or through food and chemical, and not through the mind and not through news and where you're getting your information, I mean, all that stuff comes into play. So take control of your life, take control of your health.
Yes.
You're the one that's in control. Nobody's going to save you. Save yourself. Be proactive. Enjoy chiropractic. Absolutely.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you, especially if you're in the Portland, Oregon area, and he's coming up there, where do you have a website? Where can they find you?
Website is experienceaudio.com, and I do have a page right now specifically for Portland. I'm going to be keeping the Melbourne, Florida Brevard practice itself kind of going. I'm going to keep it alive. I'll be visiting. I have a doctor doing fill-in work. I myself am going to Portland, expanding. 503-489-8984 is my Portland number. You can call or text. Again, it's 503-489-8984, and the website is experienceaudio.com. I'm on Instagram at Experience Audio, and also on Facebook.
Awesome.
And YouTube.
Oh, YouTube, awesome. Oh, even better. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
And if you are listening to this, please head over to my Facebook and my Instagram. Instagram at Run the Runpreneur, and Facebook Run, Thrive, Survive, so you never miss any content coming out, especially when it's something to better your health. So check those out, and please leave a review wherever you are listening to this podcast or YouTube video. Other than that, you guys, that's all I've got for you today. We will be back here again next week with another race review and something else to help you better your life. So until then, get outside and run your lives. Bye, guys.